Let me tell you of a story of a Filipino artist. In September of 2010, Carlos Celdran interrupted a meeting held in the Manila Cathedral in order to protest the Catholic Church's involvement in the Reproductive Health Bill. He wore a Jose Rizal costume with a sign saying Damaso, the symbol for the Church's abuse of power in Noli Me Tangere, and barged into the cathedral, telling the Church to stop getting involved into politics. People started calling this event the Damaso Stunt, and it propelled the RH bill into national consciousness. It made headlines everywhere. After this, he was convicted for offending religious feelings, an archaic law from the Spanish era, and exiled himself to Spain, where he passed away due to cardiac arrest in 2019. The conversation around the politics of the Damaso Stunt is pretty active, but we want to look into the arts of it. What can we learn from Celdran's performance? Can we even call it an artistic performance, despite how intrusive it was? And what does that say about how we evaluate art? Can art be unacceptable and still artistic?
Well, the Damaso Stunt is full of elements which give it artistic value. First, there's the artist's intention of having the church leave politics alone. Art that's politically motivated like this falls under protest art. Protest art facilitates political communication. It takes an oppositional stance against the system by revealing its faults and advocating for change. Protest art also functions to emphasize social realities. It's like this beacon that sparks the interest for further discussion. From Hall's ideas on encoding-decoding, the encoded artwork becomes a subject of decoding for the audience that breaks the conformity of an authoritative system. The Damaso Stunt did this by having people re-evaluate the conversation on reproductive health, the RH Bill itself, and the role of the Catholic Church. There's also Celdran's decision to have an outfit resembling Jose Rizal, as well as a placard that said Damaso, a notable character in Noli Me Tangere, who symbolizes the Church's power over the Filipino people. This ties back to protest art and how it generates visual impact. It can do this by using familiar references to establish the context that gives clarity to the message conveyed. It can also do this with its location, since protest art may be site-specific. Which brings us to our last point, the contentious decision to perform inside a church, right in the middle of a meeting. Suppose he set his artwork at a different time and place. Would it still have been as impactful? For this, it's worth discussing Althusser's concept of ideological state apparatuses, or ISAs. ISAs refer to systems in society that control ideology. We have religious communities, educational institutions, the media, and the likes. They influence individuals by controlling values and beliefs, and they draw the line for what's acceptable. Protest art tends to threaten the acceptability established by ISAs. For the Damaso Stunt, this ISA was the Catholic Church for their involvement in state affairs. This shook the stability that the church had developed, so much so that they wanted Celdran arrested for it. If Celdran's performance weren't as controversial, it wouldn't have been as effective at making people rethink the role of the Catholic Church.
So, now we've painted a pretty complete picture of the artistic qualities of the Damaso Stunt, but it's hard to ignore the fact that the artist is a criminal now because of what he did. It was still ruled illegal. Now, whether you agree with the ruling or not, it's hard to find the artistic depth when it's buried under all the politics. So, despite all that, can his performance somehow be illegal while still being artistic? We would argue yes. In a paper called Justifying Controversial Art in Arts Education, Langford and Pankratz discuss the values we use to evaluate controversial art. In specific contexts, we allow some values to be more important than others. A good example of this is a separation between the church and the state. Spiritually, it's important to have a religion, but politically, it's more important to have a secular government. Separate values, but one gets prioritized. In the Damaso Stunt, we're comparing acceptability and artistry. It depends on you which one matters more, but these are separate values. Offensive performance doesn't necessarily mean bad art. They belong on two separate axes. Just because it was socially controversial doesn't mean it was artistically crude. In fact, the illegality of it doesn't have to subtract from the artistic value at all. In the essay From Work to Text, Roland Barthes describes two elements that make up a piece of literature: the work and the text. The work is basically an actual thing, something you can see or touch, like a book, while the text is like the meaning that the audience creates by reading the work. As Barthes put it, the work is held in the hand, while the text is held in language. Now, Barthes uses work and text for literature, but we think we can apply this to art as well. Something like the act and the art. For the Damaso Stunt, we have the act of barging into the Manila Cathedral and the art of the social footprint that it leaves behind, the conversations it starts, the insight it creates. Most importantly, these are separate, and we can evaluate them as different things. The act could be illegal or offensive, but that doesn't automatically apply to the art. Just because bursting into a cathedral is illegal doesn't mean that the message that sends is. The Damaso Stunt was a dramatic denunciation of the Philippine Catholic Church's insistence against the RH bill. Sadly, media coverage has mostly been on Carlos Celdran's conviction and exile. We hope that by exploring his performance at a greater depth, we've given you a better understanding of this much disputed artwork. After all, as Alice Guillermo has said, from the image and its larger social context, one arrives at the meaning of the work of art. It's not just the Rizal outfit, it's the abuse of power that every Filipino high school learns about in 9th grade. It's not just the chapel, it's the institutionalized Catholicism. Every ingredient was needed to create the shocking and controversial performance that was the unforgettable Damaso Stunt.